The red warning lights flashed across the council chamber as Ambassador Zenthka pressed her 4 hands against the crystal console. Her blue skin had turned pale with fear. Another star system was gone, the 3rd one this month. How many ships? Did we lose this time? Asked General Vox Prime, his tentacles curling with anger. All of them, Zenthka whispered. 700 vessels. 2 billion civilians. The Devourers consumed everything in 48 hours. The massive chamber fell silent. Representatives from 12 different species sat around the circular table, but none of them spoke. They had fought the Devourer swarm for 3 years now. Every battle ended the same way. The aliens would arrive, strip entire planets clean of all life, and move on to the next system. Defense Minister Krelon stood up slowly. His bird-like features were tight with stress. We need to consider the final option. Every head in the room turned toward him. They all knew what he meant. The forbidden option, the one they had sworn never to use. You cannot be serious, said Ambassador Yithmore. Her insect eyes clicked nervously. The quarantine exists for good reasons. The quarantine will not matter if we are all dead, Krelon replied. The Devourers will reach the core worlds in 6 months. After that, our civilization ends. Zenthka brought up a holographic display. It showed the galaxy with red marks spreading like a disease. Each red dot was a system the Devourers had consumed. The pattern was clear. They were moving toward the center where most of the council species lived. Perhaps the humans are not as dangerous as the old stories claim, suggested General Vox Prime. Those reports are over a century old. The stories exist for a reason, Yithmore said sharply. My people had contact with them during the border wars. They do not fight like civilized beings. They fight like predators. Maybe that is exactly what we need, Zenthka said quietly. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that calling the humans would bring a worse fate than the Devourers. Others believed they had no choice left. In the end, survival won over fear. The message was simple. It was sent to Earth through the old emergency channels that had been sealed for over 100 years. To the human government of Earth, the Galactic Council faces extinction. We require military assistance against an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy. We are prepared to lift the quarantine and offer full council membership in exchange for aid. Time is critical. Please respond. The reply came back faster than expected. Just 2 words. We accept. 3 weeks later, the human ships arrived at Kepler Station, the Council's main military base. Zenthka watched through the observation deck as the dark vessels approached. They were not like Council ships, which were built for beauty as well as function. The human ships looked like weapons. All sharp angles and thick armor, no decorations. No art, just tools built for killing. They are smaller than I expected, said General Vox Prime. Only 5 ships, agreed Krelon. Perhaps they planned to send more later. Zenthka was not so sure. The humans had accepted their request very quickly, too quickly. It made her nervous. The docking bay doors opened with a loud clang. Steam poured out as the human ship's airlock connected. Then the humans emerged. Zenthka had seen pictures of humans before, but seeing them in person was different. They were not very tall compared to most council species. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their skin was various shades of brown and pink. They looked almost fragile, but their eyes were wrong. The leader stepped forward. She was a female with dark skin and black hair tied back severely. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations except for small metal bars on her collar. Her face showed no emotion at all. I am Major Elena Vasquez, she said in clear council standard. Earth Military Contracting Division. These are my team leaders. She pointed to the 4 others behind her. They were all different in appearance, but they shared the same cold expression. Like predators studying prey. We were expecting more soldiers, said General Vox Prime. You are looking at them, Vasquez replied. My team has 43 operators total. That should be sufficient. Kreelan's feathers ruffled with confusion. 43 soldiers against a swarm that has destroyed entire fleets? We do not fight the same way you do, Vasquez said simply. Zenthka felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in the human's voice. Something that reminded her of the old warnings about Earth. We need heroes, Zenthka said carefully. Beings who will inspire our people and lead them to victory. Vasquez looked at her with those flat, empty eyes. Earth does not make heroes anymore, Ambassador. We make something else. What do you make? Asked Yithmor. Vasquez smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. We make problems go away, permanently. The human team was given quarters in the military section of the station. They did not socialize with the council forces. They did not attend the welcome ceremonies. They simply went to their rooms and began studying enemy data. That night, Zenthka could not sleep. She kept thinking about Vasquez's smile and those dead eyes. She pulled up the old files about humans. The reports from species who had encountered them during their expansion period. The files painted a terrifying picture. Humans did not just win wars. They eliminated enemies completely. They used tactics that other species considered barbaric. They fought without honor or mercy. They turned warfare into a science of destruction. But the most disturbing thing was how they justified their actions. They always claimed they were the heroes. They always insisted they were saving people, even while they committed acts that haunted other species for generations. Zenthka closed the files and stared out at the human ships floating in the darkness. The council had asked for heroes to save them from monsters. She was beginning to suspect they had invited something far worse into their home. In the morning, she would discover just how right she was. Major Vasquez stood in the war room studying the tactical displays. The holographic maps showed Devourer movements across 17 star systems. Red dots marked their fleets. Blue dots showed council forces. The red was winning. Their attack. Pattern makes no sense, said Admiral Vekris, his scales clicking nervously. They ignore strategic targets and focus on population centers. It makes perfect sense, Vasquez replied without looking away from the display. They are not trying to win territory. They are harvesting biomass. Every person they consume makes them stronger. Captain Sarah Chun, one of Vasquez's team, stepped forward. She was a small woman with scars on her hands and neck. How much do they need to eat per day? We estimate each Devourer unit requires approximately 50 kilograms of organic matter, said Admiral Vekris. Chun smiled coldly. Then we starve. Them. The alien officers exchanged worried looks. Commander Yalvex, a tall insect-like being, clicked his mandibles. What do you mean? We poisoned their food supply, Chun explained. Introduce toxins into civilian populations before the Devourers arrive. They eat contaminated biomass, they die. The room fell silent. Admiral Vekris turned pale blue. You are suggesting we murder our own people? I am suggesting we make their deaths count for something, Chun said simply. That is barbaric, said Commander Yalvex. We do not sacrifice civilians. Vasquez finally turned around. Her dark eyes swept across the alien officers. How many civilians have you lost so far? That is not the point, Admiral Vekris said. Answer the question. Approximately 12 billion across all species. And how many Devourers have you killed? The Admiral's shoulders slumped. Perhaps a few thousand. So your honorable tactics have resulted in 12 billion deaths and almost no enemy casualties. Our barbaric suggestion might save trillions. Vasquez's voice was flat and emotionless. Which approach actually values civilian lives? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A communications officer rushed in. Admiral, we have reports of a Devourer scout fleet entering the Proxima system. They are requesting immediate support. Admiral Vecris straightened up. Prepare the Third Fleet for deployment. We will accompany you, Vasquez said. That is not necessary. This is a simple reconnaissance mission. Vasquez looked at him with those cold eyes. Nothing is simple when dealing with the Devourers. We will accompany you. The joint fleet departed 6 hours later. 20 Council warships and 1 small human vessel. The Council ships were massive and beautiful, with curved hulls and gleaming surfaces. The human ship looked like a black knife cutting through space. When they reached Proxima system, they found the Devourer scouts already attacking the outer colonies. 3 dark ships, each the size of a city, were systematically stripping the planets clean. Standard battle formation, ordered Admiral Vecris. We will engage at maximum range and attempt to drive them off. The Council ships moved into position and began firing their plasma cannons. Bright beams of energy lanced across space toward the Devourer vessels. The enemy ships absorbed the impacts without slowing down. Minimal damage to enemy vessels, reported the tactical officer. They are adapting to our weapons. Vasquez spoke. Over the communication channel. This is not working. We need to try a different approach. What do you suggest? Asked Admiral Vecris. Watch and learn. The human ship suddenly changed course. Instead of staying with the fleet, it dove straight toward the planet where thousands of civilians were trapped. For a moment, it looked like the humans were abandoning the fight. Then something strange happened. The human ship began broadcasting on all frequencies, but it was not calling for help. It was playing recordings of Devourer communication signals. Effect was immediate. The 3 Devourer ships stopped their harvesting and turned toward the human vessel. They moved faster than anyone had ever seen them move before. What are you doing? Admiral Vecris demanded. Creating an opportunity, Vasquez replied calmly. The Devourer ships converged on the human vessel. They were so focused on the strange signals that they ignored everything else. At the last moment, the human ship released something into space. Dozens of small objects that looked like escape pods. The Devourers immediately began consuming the pods. Within minutes, their ship started shaking. Internal explosions rocked their hulls. One ship lost power completely. What was in those pods? Asked Commander Yalvex. Concentrated antimatter wrapped in synthetic biomass, Captain Chun explained. We made them smell like your people, so the Devourers would eat them immediately. The damaged Devourer ships tried to retreat, but the human vessel was not finished. It launched a second wave of projectiles. These ones penetrated the enemy hulls and exploded inside. When the battle ended, all 3 Devourer ships were destroyed. The Council fleet had barely fired a shot. Admiral Vecris stared at the tactical display in shock. How did you know they would respond to those signals? We have been studying your previous encounters, Vasquez said. The Devourers are not just hungry, they are territorial. They respond aggressively to certain frequency patterns because they think other Devourers are trying to steal their food. You used their own instincts against them, said Commander Yalvex. There was something like fear in his voice. We used everything against them. Their hunger, their territorial nature, their lack of imagination. That is how you win wars. You study your enemy until you understand them better than they understand themselves. The fleet returned to Kepler Station in triumph. The Council officers were celebrating their first real victory against the Devourers. But some of them were also troubled. That night, Admiral Vecris found Commander Yalvex in the observation lounge, staring out at the human ship. You look concerned, the Admiral said. I have been thinking about the battle, Yalvex replied. The humans did not just defeat the Devourers, they manipulated them, made them act against their own interests. Is that not a good thing? Yalvex's mandibles clicked nervously. What if they decide to manipulate us the same way? Admiral Vec Reese followed his gaze to the dark human vessel. They are our allies. The Devourers were probably allies to someone once too, Yalvek said quietly. Before they became predators. Neither of them noticed the small listening device attached to the underside of the table, or the fact that their entire conversation was being recorded and transmitted to the human ship in her quarters aboard the vessel. Major Vasquez listened to the recording with a slight smile. She made a note in her personal log. Council forces showing expected resistance to new tactical approaches. Recommend accelerated timeline for Phase 2 operations. She closed the log and looked out at the Council ships floating nearby. The aliens thought they had won a great victory today. They had no idea that the real war had not even started yet. The Devourers were just the enemy they could see. The humans were the ones they should have been worried about. 3 weeks after the Proxima victory, Major Vasquez walked into the Council war room carrying a data pad. The alien commanders were celebrating another small success against a Devourer patrol. Their mood changed when they saw her expression. "We have a problem," she announced, placing the pad on the central table. Admiral Vec Reese looked at the display. It showed new intelligence reports about Devourer movements. "What am I looking at?" "They are learning," Vasquez said simply. "The antimatter trick worked once. It will not work again. They have changed their feeding patterns and started ignoring our fake signals." Commander Yalvex studied the data with growing alarm. "Their adaptation rate is faster than we calculated." "Much faster," agreed Captain Chun, who had entered behind. "Vasquez, at this rate, they will counter every tactic we develop within days of first use. So what do you propose?" Asked Admiral THEK-RIS. Vasquez activated a new holographic display. It showed a detailed map of Devourer territory with movement patterns highlighted in red. "We need to understand how they adapt so quickly. Their hive mind must have some kind of central learning system, obviously," said Yalvex. "But we cannot reach their core ships. They are too well protected." "We do not need to reach them," Vasquez replied. "We need them to come to us." She manipulated the display to show several council systems near the front lines. Each one had large civilian populations. "We deliberately lose several battles," she continued. "Make it look like we are retreating. Let them capture these systems and study how they process the populations." The room fell silent. Admiral Vec Reese stared at the display in horror. "You want to sacrifice entire worlds?" "I want to save our entire civilization," Vasquez said. "These systems will fall eventually anyway. If we control how they fall, we can learn from it." "Absolutely not," Admiral Vec Reese said firmly. "We do not abandon our people." "Then you will lose everything," Captain Chun said. "The Devourers are not going to stop adapting. Every day we wait, they get harder to kill." Commander Yalvex looked between the humans and his fellow officers. "How many people live in those systems?" "Approximately 40 million across all species." Vasquez answered. "And how many will die if we cannot stop the Devourers?" "Everyone." The debate lasted for hours. The council commanders refused to approve the plan. They would not sacrifice civilians, no matter what the strategic benefit might be. The humans listened to their arguments with cold patience. Finally, Vasquez stood up. "I understand your position. We will find another way." But she did not find another way. Instead, she did something that shocked everyone. 2 days later, reports came in that the human fleet had engaged Devourer forces near the Altair system. According to the transmissions, they were losing badly and requesting immediate support. Admiral Vec Reese mobilized the Third Fleet to assist. When they arrived at Altair, they found wreckage floating in space. Human ship debris mixed with Devourer remains, no survivors on either side. "Scan for life signs," ordered Admiral Vec Reese. "Nothing, sir," reported his tactical officer. "But there are escape pod signatures heading toward the inner system." They found the human survivors on Altair Prime, helping to evacuate the civilian population. Major Vasquez was coordinating the rescue efforts with a bandage wrapped around her head. What happened? Admiral Vecris asked. We underestimated their numbers, Vasquez replied. They hit us with 3 times the expected force. We managed to damage their ships, but they will be back soon. True to her prediction, the Devourers returned within hours. This time, the combined Council and human forces were not enough to stop them. They were forced to retreat and watch as the aliens consumed Altair Prime's population. The same pattern repeated at Kepler 442 and Wolf 359. The humans would engage the Devourers alone, suffer heavy losses, and barely escape. Then the combined fleet would arrive too late to save the civilian populations. After the third defeat, Admiral Vecris confronted Vasquez in private. You are losing too many ships, he said. Perhaps you should coordinate with us before engaging. We are trying to buy time for evacuations, Vasquez replied. Someone has to slow them down. Your sacrifices are honorable, but they are not working. Vasquez nodded sadly. You are right. We need a new approach. What Admiral Vecris did not know was that the human losses were fake. The ship debris was manufactured. The escape pods contained observation equipment, not survivors. And every time the Devourers consumed a world, the humans were recording everything. In her real headquarters, hidden in an asteroid field, Vasquez studied the data with her full team. 43 operators, all very much alive, monitored Devourer behavior patterns. Analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, a thin man with calculating eyes. The hive mind processes new information through specialized feeder units. They sample approximately 2% of consumed biomass for memory. Extraction. Location of the processing nodes? Asked Vasquez. Always in the third ship of any formation. They maintain a specific distance from feeding operations to avoid contamination. Captain Chun smiled coldly. So if we poison the right 2% of a population, we can deliver targeted attacks directly to their learning centers. Better than that, said Vasquez. We can feed them false information. Make them think they have adapted to threats that do not actually exist. Lieutenant Rodriguez brought up new displays showing chemical analysis. I have identified the specific pheromone markers they use to select memory extraction samples. We can manufacture synthetic versions. How long to produce enough for a full deployment? Asked Vasquez. 72 hours, Vasquez nodded. Begin production immediately, and prepare the council briefing materials. What are you going to tell them? Asked Chun. The truth. That we have found a way to stop the Devourers permanently. They will want to know how we discovered this. We will tell them we captured a damaged Devourer ship during one of our heroic last stands. 3 days later, Vasquez presented her findings to the council leadership. She explained how the Devourer hive mind worked and outlined a plan to disrupt their learning process. This is remarkable intelligence, said Admiral Vecris. How did you obtain it? We recovered data cores from a crippled Devourer vessel at Wolf 359, Vasquez lied smoothly. Our people died to bring you this information. Commander Yalvex studied the tactical plans. This approach requires precise timing and coordination. One mistake could alert them to our true capabilities. That is why we need complete operational control, Vasquez said. No interference from Council command structure. No second guessing of tactical decisions. You want us to give you authority over all military operations? Asked Admiral Vecris. I want you to let us win this war. The Council debated for hours. In the end, faced with continued losses and the promise of a real solution, they agreed. Emergency powers were granted to the human forces. As Vasquez left the meeting, she allowed herself a small smile. The Council had just handed control of their entire military to the people they should have been most afraid of. The aliens still thought the humans were trying to save them. They had no idea that the real plan was just beginning. Phase 2 was about to commence. 2 months after taking control of military operations, Major Vasquez stood in the command center watching her plan unfold. The Devourer forces were retreating for the first time in 3 years. Her bioweapons were working perfectly, but Admiral Vec Reese was asking too many questions. "The casualty reports do not make sense," he said, studying the data on his screen. "We are winning battles, but our losses are still very high." "War is expensive," Vasquez replied without looking away from the tactical display. "Not like this. We are losing more ships in victory than we did in defeat. And these missing personnel reports." He gestured at another screen. "Entire crews are disappearing." Captain Chun stepped forward. "Admiral, perhaps you should focus on the bigger picture. We are actually beating the Devourers." "At what cost?" Vec Reese demanded. "Half my fleet commanders have been replaced with human officers. My intelligence staff has been reassigned. I can barely get casualty reports from my own forces." Vasquez finally turned around, her cold eyes fixed on the Admiral. "Are you questioning our methods?" "I am questioning everything," Vec Reese said. 3 weeks ago, Commander Yalvek started investigating supply irregularities. Yesterday, he died in what you called a training accident. "Training accidents happen," said Chun. "Not to experienced commanders. Not while they are reviewing classified files about human operations." The command center fell silent. Other council officers stopped their work and turned to watch. Vasquez studied Admiral Vec Reese for a long moment. "You think we killed him?" she said. "I think you are not the heroes we believed you to be." Vasquez smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Heroes are for children's stories, Admiral. We are what happens when the children grow up and face real monsters." "And what are you, exactly?" "We are the people who do what needs to be done. While you worried about honor and casualties, we solved your Devourer problem. The hive mind is breaking apart. Their fleets are scattered. In 6 months, they will be extinct." Admiral Vec Reese stood up slowly. "I am relieving you of command and placing you under arrest for war crimes." The human officers in the room did not move. They just looked at Vasquez and waited. "Computer, activate security protocol 77 Alpha," Vasquez said calmly. Suddenly, every screen in the command center changed. Instead of tactical displays, they showed video files. Personal communications between council leaders. Secret meetings, private conversations. Admiral Vec Reese watched in horror as his own voice played from the speakers. It was a recording from 2 years ago, during the early days of the war. "If we cannot find a way to stop the Devourers, we may need to consider abandoning the outer colonies," his recorded voice said. "Better to lose a few worlds than our entire civilization." Another recording played. Commander Yalvex discussing plans to retreat from the front lines. Another council member suggesting they negotiate surrender terms with the Devourers. "You have been recording everything," Vec Reese whispered. "Of course we have," Vasquez replied. "How do you think we won your trust so easily? We knew exactly what you needed to hear." More recordings played. Council leaders discussing secret deals. Military commanders planning to sacrifice smaller species to save their own people. Politicians arguing about which worlds were worth defending. "This is blackmail," said Vec Reese. "This is insurance," Vasquez corrected. "Your people asked us to save you from the Devourers. We agreed, but we never promised to save you from yourselves." She gestured to the screens around them. "Do you want these recordings released to the public? Your people need heroes right now. How will they react when they learn their leaders were planning to abandon them?" Admiral Vec Reese looked around the command center. Every council officer was staring at him with expressions of shock and betrayal. Even his own staff looked disturbed by what they had heard. "What do you want?" He asked quietly. Complete cooperation, Vasquez replied. No more questions about our methods. No more investigations into our operations. You give us what we need to finish this war. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow morning, every news network in Council space will receive copies of these files. Your government will fall, your people will panic, and the devourers will have an easier time finishing what they started. Vecris sat down heavily. You planned this from the beginning. We planned for every possibility, said Captain Chun, including the possibility that our allies might become obstacles. Lieutenant Rodriguez entered the command center carrying a data pad. Major, we have a problem. Someone has been accessing our secure files. Vasquez took the pad and read quickly. Her expression darkened. Who? Ambassador Zenthka. She used Admiral Vecris's access codes to review our operational reports. What did she find? Everything. The fake ship losses, the civilian experiments, the bioweapon development, all of it. Vasquez closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression was completely cold. Where is she now? Her quarters. But Major, she has already sent encrypted messages to the Council homeworlds. Content? Unknown. The encryption is Council diplomatic level. Vasquez looked at Admiral Vecris. Call her here, now. I will not help you silence her, Vecris said. You will, or those recordings get released in the next 10 minutes. Vecris hesitated, then activated his communicator. Ambassador Zenthka, please report to the command center immediately. 15 minutes later, the ambassador arrived. She took one look at the tense faces around her and understood immediately. So you know, she said calmly. We know you have been spying on us, Vasquez replied. The question is what you plan to do about it. I plan to expose you, Zenthka said. The Council needs to know what kind of monsters they invited into their home. The Council needs to survive, said Chun. Everything else is secondary. Survival without morality is not survival at all. It is just existence. Vasquez stepped closer to the ambassador. Your people were dying. We saved them. The methods do not matter. The methods are all that matter, Zenthka replied. You turned us into accomplices to genocide. You used our desperation to make us complicit in atrocities. We used your desperation to save your civilization. You used our desperation to conquer it. The two women stared at each other in silence. Finally, Vasquez spoke. What did you tell the homeworlds? I told them the truth. That Earth did not send heroes. That Earth sent something much worse. And what did they say? Zenthka smiled sadly. They said to thank you for your service and give you whatever you need to finish the job. Vasquez blinked in surprise. They know? They have always known. The Council leaders are not fools, Major. They understood what kind of people you were from the moment you arrived. But they were desperate enough to accept your help anyway. Then why are you here? Because someone needs to remember what we lost when we made that choice. Someone needs to witness what we became. Zenthka looked around the command center at the Council officers who would not meet her eyes. You won the war for us, she continued, but you also won something else. You won us. Everything we were, everything we believed in, everything that made us different from the devourers. You consumed it all. Vasquez felt something strange inside her chest. For just a moment, she almost felt guilty. Then the feeling passed. The galaxy is safe, she said. No, Zenthka replied. The galaxy just has new predators. She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she paused. For what it is worth, Major, I do not think you are evil. I think you are something worse. I think you are necessary. After she left, the command center remained silent for a long time. Finally, Admiral Vecris spoke. What happens now? Vasquez looked at the tactical displays showing their victorious fleets. Now we finish what we started. The Devourers die. Order is restored. And the galaxy learns to live under new management. Human management. Better management. She turned back to her work, dismissing the conversation. There was still a war to win, and winning was all that mattered. 6 months later, Major Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the new flagship, watching construction ships build another human settlement. The planet below had once been home to 3 million council citizens. Now it housed 50,000. Human colonists and twice as many alien workers. The war was over. The Devourer threat had ended exactly as she predicted. But the galaxy looked very different now. "The morning reports, Protector," said Captain Chen, offering her a datapad. Vasquez still felt strange hearing that title. The Council had insisted on it after the final victory. Protector of the Galaxy. It sounded heroic. That was probably the point. She read through the reports quickly. Food production on 12 worlds was ahead of schedule. Mining operations in the Rigel sector had exceeded quotas. The new security protocols were working well. "Any problems?" she asked. "Minor labor disputes on Kepler 438. The local population is complaining about work quotas again. Resolved?" We reminded them about the protection fees. They decided the quotas were reasonable after all. Vasquez nodded and continued reading. It was amazing how quickly things had settled into routine. The transition from war to peace had been smoother than anyone expected. Of course, it helped that most of the transition had been planned in advance. Commander Rodriguez reports the pacification program is complete, Shun continued. The last independent council fleet surrendered yesterday. Casualties? Minimal. They chose to join our forces rather than resist. That was the beauty of the system they had created. They never forced anyone to do anything. They simply made the alternatives unacceptable. The former council species could choose to work with human administration. They received protection, steady, food supplies, and medical care. Their lives were safe and comfortable, or they could choose independence. In which case, they discovered that their technology no longer worked properly. Their supply chains broke down. Their communication networks failed. Pirates attacked their shipping. Disease outbreaks spread through their populations. Most chose cooperation. Status of the Devourer reserves? Vasquez asked. 17 hive ships remain under our control, all functioning normally. That had been the real stroke of genius. Instead of destroying the Devourers completely, they had captured and domesticated them. With the right chemical controls, the creatures made excellent shock troops. They were utterly loyal to whoever controlled their food supply. The process had been simpler than expected. The Devourers were not truly intelligent. They were just very efficient biological machines. Once you understood how their programming worked, reprogramming them was straightforward. "Any word from Earth?" Vasquez asked. Standard monthly report. "They are pleased with our progress." Vasquez smiled slightly. Earth was indeed pleased. The home planet now controlled an empire spanning half the galaxy. Resources flowed back to the solar system in vast quantities. Human colonies were spreading to every habitable world. And all of it had been accomplished without Earth firing a single shot or sending a single invasion fleet. They had simply sent 43 military contractors to help some desperate aliens with a pest problem. "Protector," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, entering the observation deck. "We have received a priority transmission from the Galactic Rim. Origin? Unknown species. They claim to represent something called the hegemony. They are requesting assistance with a military threat." Vasquez felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. What kind of threat? They describe it as a machine intelligence that is consuming star systems, converting all matter into computing substrate. How many worlds have they lost? According to their message, approximately 50 systems in the last 6 months. Chun looked at Vasquez with interest. Another swarm. Scenario? Possibly. Or something entirely new. Vasquez turned to Rodriguez. Composition of the hegemony? 17 different species across 43 star systems. Total population estimated at 70 billion. Industrial capacity? Advanced. They mentioned technologies we have not encountered before. Vasquez studied the data for several minutes. It was an interesting situation. A new threat meant new opportunities. And if these hegemony species had advanced technology, they would be valuable additions to human-controlled space. Send a reply, she said finally. Tell them Earth is prepared to offer assistance. What are our terms? Asked Chun. Standard package. Full military cooperation. Access to all intelligence regarding the enemy. And temporary administrative authority over defensive operations. Duration of the contract? Open-ended. Until the threat is permanently resolved. Rodriguez nodded and began composing the message. Vasquez looked out at the planet below and smiled. The construction ships were making good progress. In another month, this world would be completely integrated into the human sphere. Ma'am, said Chun quietly, do you ever think about what Ambassador Zenthka said? Which part? About us being necessary. Vasquez considered the question. Do you think she was wrong? I think she was right. But I wonder if that makes us the good guys or the bad guys. Does it matter? Chun shrugged. Probably not. But I sometimes wonder what would have happened if the Council had never called for help. They would have died, Vasquez said simply. The Devourers would have consumed everything, and the galaxy would be empty. And now? Now the galaxy is full of life. Organized life. Productive life. Life that serves a purpose. Human purpose. Better purpose than extinction. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ships work below. Finally, Chun spoke again. The new species probably think we are going to save them. We are going to save them, Vasquez replied. Just not in the way they expect. From the machine intelligence, from themselves, from chaos, from the illusion that they can survive alone in a hostile universe. Rodriguez finished composing the message and looked up. Reply sent, Protector. Estimated travel time to hegemony. Space is 3 weeks. Good. Begin preparations for deployment. Standard protocol. How many ships? 1. Plus support staff. Rodriguez looked confused. Just 1 ship? Against a machine intelligence that has consumed 50 star systems? Vasquez smiled coldly. We are not going there to fight the machines, Lieutenant. We are going there to study them. To understand how they work, to learn what they want, and then? Then we decide whether to destroy them, control them, or make a deal with them. What if they cannot be reasoned with? Everything can be reasoned with. You just need to find the right language. She turned away from the observation window and headed toward the door. Prepare my personal files for the trip, and send a message to the Devourer reserves. Tell them they may have new hunting grounds. Soon. As she walked through the corridors of the flagship, Vasquez reflected on how much had changed. 2 years ago, she had been a simple military contractor following orders. Now she was the most powerful person in the galaxy. The irony was not lost on her. The Council had asked for heroes to save them from monsters. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than any monster they could have imagined. They had created a predator that hunted predators. A monster that tamed monsters. A force that brought order to chaos by becoming chaos itself. Ambassador Zenthka had been right about one thing. The galaxy did have new predators now. But she had been wrong about something else. The humans were not worse than the Devourers. They were more efficient. As she reached her quarters, Vasquez allowed herself one last smile. Somewhere on the galactic rim, 70 billion people were desperately waiting for heroes to save them from an unstoppable threat. They had no idea that their salvation was already on the way, and they had no idea what the price would be. But they would learn. Everyone always learned, eventually. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of threats that could destroy entire civilizations. Someone needed to protect the innocent from those threats. Someone necessary. Someone human.